This is a Flipping Junkie podcast, episode 38. Welcome to the Flipping Junkie podcast. My name is Danny Johnson, former software developer turned house flipper, flipping hundreds of houses. Each week, we bring you interviews, strategies, stories, and motivation to help you get started flipping houses and on your way to becoming your own boss and achieving financial freedom. Thanks for spending time with me today. Now let's get to it. All right, guys, got a new episode to the Flipping Junkie podcast. We're in this series of going through somewhat of a training course, like a free training course for learning how to flip houses and all the ins and outs of what you need to know. So we started quite a ways back, probably 10 episodes or more, for starting with the foundation and mindset and getting motivated to stay motivated as you get into flipping houses. And then we talked about funding, how to get funding for buying properties to flip, to do all that. So we talked about joint venturing, partnerships, private money, lending, hard money lenders, stuff like that. So check out all those episodes. And right now we're going to be transitioning into the marketing part of it. So here's the meat of it. A lot of people struggle with this part of finding deals. And it's really, what everything boils down to with becoming a successful house flipper. Many people get into this business and think, they'll send out 100 postcards and probably get some people calling needing to sell their house. And when they don't get any calls, they get disappointed and try something else. And they just keep repeating that sort of, process over and over again and, continue to strike out and then lose any hope of it, start to think negative thoughts, think things like, well, this doesn't work where I am. Danny's area is different. San Antonio is different than where I'm investing and things like that. So we're gonna cover how to approach this. And today, the meat of what we're going to be talking about is what to say to motivated sellers. So when you get that call from a motivated seller, you're going to know exactly what to say, how to say it, why you're saying it. All of those things we're going to talk about in this episode. So there's going to be a real good one, very important one. And I wanted to start it out with a little story about whenever we got our first call. We had sent out some postcards. We had driven for dollars where we went around looking for vacant houses or houses that appeared vacant and sent them a postcard saying that we'd like to buy that house and make them an offer. And the first call that I got to my cell phone from a number I didn't recognize, I got freaked out. I just all of a sudden got tense, didn't know what to say. And before I answered the phone, I just threw it to my wife and asked her to take the call because I just froze. It was crazy. So it's expected to be nervous and, that's just something you deal with. And, obviously over time, you'll get through that and you'll get used to it. So you got to get yourself out of your comfort zone, understand that most people doing that for the first time are pretty nervous about doing it and aren't sure of what to ask. So what happened there was my wife, Melissa, has been with me through this business throughout everything and has really been a huge part of it. I would have never been able to do what we've been able to do without her. So, but she asked some questions and everything and was real friendly with the person calling, the seller of the house. And after she hung up, I think we realized that she never found out what the address of the house was or something like that. It was something that seemed somewhat basic, and I can't say anything negative about that because I didn't even take the call. I threw the phone to her. But so we had to call them back and ask some questions and understand that that's likely to happen with those first calls where you're going to have maybe more questions after you hang up the phone that you think about later that you should have asked. And it's sort of a building process that you get used to. But hopefully today's podcast episode will help you, maybe shortcut that a little bit, being that we're talking from years of experience, talking to now thousands of motivated sellers. So obviously I'm not nervous anymore about taking those calls and able to train other people to do that for us. And it's really not that difficult. So we'll get right into it. Basically, we focus almost entirely on marketing to motivated sellers. Other people do go after MLS properties, bank-owned properties, and have always, stayed away from marketing to motivated sellers for many reasons. Some people think that it's almost like a equivalent of, ambulance chaser type of marketing or something, but it's really not, because once you get some calls from people that absolutely need your service, you'll understand what it's all about, and it's really powerful. It's really amazing to get calls from people and be able to help them out. You buy their house, of course, you get a good deal on it, but they are knowing full well that they're selling below market value, but they want the trade-off of just not having the hassle. They want to be done with that headache and that problem property, and you're the person that's going to do it for them, and they'll be very happy about it. And they're not stupid. I think whenever people say, well, people, buying houses directly from sellers are ripping them off and things like that, it's because they've never done it and they don't understand, the mentality of it. And that basically says to me that you think that the sellers are all stupid, and that tells me you've never talked to and worked with a lot of these sellers. And so give it a try. You'll understand that maybe you had the wrong idea. And so that's that's very important to understand. So we target mostly motivated sellers, or people wanting to sell their house in the non-conventional way. They don't want to wait for a bunch of buyers to come through that might not be qualified to buy their house. They don't want to list it with a realtor, and they just want to be done with this property for whatever reason. There's hundreds of situations we've come across, and everybody's got a different point of view. So, and I've been in a position where I've had a property that I didn't care that I lost, some equity in the house by selling it to another investor. I wanted to be done with the thing, so I can understand homeowners that are in that position as well, because I've been there with a rental property that we had in a bad part of town. But other people target maybe those bank-owned properties and things like that, thinking that it's just an easier thing to do because the houses, you're not dealing with people more, you're just dealing with agents and things like that. So there's not the emotional aspect of it. Sometimes with motivated sellers, you'll have an emotional aspect of it where they grew up in the house, and you really have to be approaching it from a position of helping people and really genuinely wanting to do that. So if you're not the type of person that has the patience for that, you probably, I don't think, should be doing it, or you should hire somebody else that does, because you want to be genuine. If you have trouble, helping people or understanding where people are coming from with those situations and problems, then it's best to figure something else out. But the goals that you're going to have when talking to somebody that calls you, so you're going to do marketing. You're going to send a postcard that says that we buy San Antonio houses, we'll pay you cash for your house, or whatever kind of marketing that you do. And we'll get into that in the next coming episodes for direct mail and online marketing, stuff like that, to find leads. But I wanted you to have a foundation of how to talk to sellers when they do call. So the goals of the conversation that you should have whenever you have sellers calling you are going to be, number one, to determine if a deal is even remotely possible. If you can't help them, you shouldn't waste their time. And sometimes when we're newer at this, and I'm sure I did it a lot as well, where I talked and talked, built rapport, and found out this and that and the other thing, and then 30 minutes later come to find out that they bought the house last year for over market value and have no equity at all, and are not behind in payments, and the house is in perfect condition. It doesn't really help. We just waste each other's time because we're not able to get a deal from it. And so with doing that, you really need to know your strategy for how you're going to be investing. Are you going to be a buy and hold investor? Are you going to be a flipper, a wholesaler? And then you'll understand how you can determine if a deal is even remotely possible. And that's basically almost always, for me, based on how much they owe on the property and what it's worth fixed up. Sometimes I'll hear people say, well, they're asking this amount, so we can't get a deal. So I'm not gonna proceed with trying to buy this house because they're asking this much. And it really doesn't matter what somebody's asking for a property. I mean, anybody can ask anything, and they, a lot of people are a little bit more savvy, and they're going to ask for more than they expect to get. And so you can't take that asking price as the price to determine whether a deal is possible or not. I always go off of what is owed. And as we get into the questions on what to say to motivated sellers, there's 15 questions I'm going to bring up in this podcast. And one of those gets into how much is owed. And some people struggle with asking that, so we'll talk about that. Okay, so the first goal, like I said, was determining whether a deal is even possible so that you don't waste their time or your time. The second goal is to determine how motivated they are. So you really want to have some motivation there for whatever reason to sell the house and be okay with losing the equity. Sometimes people are just hoping they see somebody's advertising, you buy houses, and they're just kind of calling you in the hopes that you're going to pay full market value and all that kind of stuff. So you don't want to be dealing with that. It's a waste of time. And almost always when somebody calls and says, talks about all the awesome things they did to the house, they just remodeled it, all this kind of stuff, chances aren't all that great. Now, if they didn't owe very much and they were calling me and they wanted to talk, and I find that they're not very motivated based on what they're saying, and we'll talk about those questions. 15 questions will help you determine more of their motivation. But if they're not very motivated, what I do is basically, work up a ballpark figure, call them back, and give them the ballpark just to see if that price is somewhere within the realm of possibility for them, because they didn't sound motivated at all. Okay, and so the next goal is to build rapport. When you're on the phone with somebody, if you've determined that a deal is possible, you've determined they've got some motivation, you're building rapport. First phone conversation, they can't see you, they can't see your body language, so your tone of voice and your confidence really has to come through. And I know that's hard, especially for me in the beginning. Even I freaked out through the phone to my wife, and the next phone calls I was just my mind was everywhere. I didn't know what to do. But as over time you get confident with it, and you really have to portray that confidence, because you're marketing that you can buy houses, and that's not something that everybody or a lot of people can do. And so you have to, when someone's looking at considering an offer from you, they have to feel confident that you'd actually be able to perform. They don't want to have any kind of a feeling that you don't know what you're doing. So that first maybe 5, 10, 20 calls, you might have problems with that, but you've got to get through them so that you can get that confidence. And it's just a necessity to get through. So I would say don't not market and take calls because you don't want to, you want to avoid not sounding confident. You've got to get through that. So you have to do that. And so take those calls, maybe practice with people, have some friends or something call you and do a little bit of role playing or something. But the next thing that we want to get out of the conversation is to schedule an appointment immediately. Now, this one's huge, and a lot of people, they feel like they made progress. I got a call from a seller. It's awesome. So now I'm going to take time. I'm going to take my time because I'm kind of freaking out, don't know what I'm going to do or what's going to happen at this meeting if I go to look at the house, all this and that. And the other thing, there's all kinds of things that come up that you're going to worry about. But you have to, on that phone call, schedule that appointment as soon as you can, as soon as they'd be able to show it to you. Because here's the thing, if they're calling you and they're super motivated and they're wanting to get rid of a property, sometimes they don't sound super motivated, and you can't tell that right off the bat. And if you don't schedule that appointment right away, if you tell them you're going to call them back after you do some research, they could be calling your competition next. And if the competition's got experience, they're going to schedule an appointment immediately. And sometimes even before you can call them back to schedule the appointment, if you didn't do it while you're on the phone, they could already be over at the house signing a contract with that seller while you're calling back just to schedule the appointment. So you don't want to be that person. And honestly, marketing to motivated sellers, in the beginning, you could even be needing 50, 60, 70, even 100 leads or calls before you have, a really good deal that you can put under contract. So you never know which one that's going to be. That could be the first call that you get. It could be the 5th call, the 10th. You don't know which one is going to be that super great one. So anytime there's those other goals met, as far as finding out that there's a deal remotely possible, that there is motivation, and that you've built rapport, you got to schedule that appointment immediately. There's nothing that says that you can't schedule that appointment, do some research, find out that, maybe there's no way that you can make that a deal. You can call them back and schedule the appointment. So go ahead and schedule it. So let's go through the 15 questions that you should be asking sellers when they call you from your marketing to buy houses. And I will, on the show notes page, provide you this checklist of questions on the show notes page at FlippingJunkie.com/38. FlippingJunkie.com/38. You can download that PDF checklist to print out so that whenever you get calls, you can make sure you hit all of the bases. And an important thing to remember is these questions, don't feel like this is something where you're drilling them and you have to just answer all these questions in order. It really should be conversational. And that takes time to get the confidence and experience to make these phone calls conversational and start asking some more open-ended questions as you figure things out a little bit better, because you don't want to be like a hard sell kind of person, or somebody that's in there just hitting them up with all these questions, because you're not building rapport when you do that. When it's more conversational, so if you ask one of these questions and they give you an answer and they seem to talk a little bit more about it, you might want to extend that question with more open-ended questions to keep them talking, because they're feeling comfortable with you and they're sharing more information. And that's what you want to really get based on these 4 goals that we talked about of finding out if the deal is remotely possible, how motivated they are, and building that rapport. So that's very important to remember, and you can get that checklist from FlippingJunkie.com/38. That's the show notes page, and there'll be a section there to download the checklist and just to do that. So let's get started. So the first question seems pretty obvious. It's, who am I speaking with? You need to know who you're talking to. That way you also have their name to use throughout the conversation, so that they don't feel like it's just somebody that doesn't care who they are or what they're facing or any of that. You need to be personable and get the name and use that throughout the conversation as you're talking to them. And, a lot of times I'll tell them my name to make sure they know who they're speaking with, and have my first name so that they know it's a one-on-one conversation and not them talking to some company that could care less about who they are. So that one's pretty basic. Make sure that right away you let them know who you are and find out who you're talking to. So the next one that I typically ask is, what's the address of the house that you want to sell? And it's pretty important. Like I said, that first call that we did, I think we forgot to even ask that. So make sure that you ask, what is the house that you're wanting to get an offer for? And sometimes this can show you a little bit of where the seller's coming from. Sometimes you'll have somebody refuse to tell you the address, and that doesn't necessarily mean that they're not motivated. That just could mean that whatever marketing you sent out didn't make them feel very comfortable. It made them comfortable enough to call you and curious to call you. So that's just something where you maybe don't ask it for it. You ask for it, they refuse to give it to you. You just continue on with other information, and then by the end of it, maybe they'd be willing to give you that information. Don't consider that being something that shows that they're not motivated at all. All right. So once you have that address, if they do give it to you, there's a lot of information that you can get that you don't have to really ask the seller about. If you're at a computer while you're taking the call, you can go to your county assessor's website, plug in that address, and find out all sorts of information. Even go onto maps.google.com and pull up the street view, and you can even walk down the street virtually while you're talking to them, looking at the house, looking at the neighbors' houses, and all that kind of stuff, and get a better feel for what you're dealing with. So that was number 2, is getting the address. Number 3 would be how many bedrooms and bathrooms it has. You want to find out whether one of those bedrooms was like a converted garage or something like that, and because that could sometimes affect the value, because you're losing a garage, or you might have a weird flow or layout. So typically I ask how many bedrooms and bathrooms it has, and sometimes that's on the the assessor's website, so you might be able to find that out and skip that question. The next one would be, does it have a garage, basement, or pool? And you want to find out about the levels of, in Texas we don't have many basements, so that's something we don't typically ask, but I'm sure in places where they have basements, you have different levels of finishes on the basement. Sometimes they're unfinished, sometimes they're finished, etc. And then for the pool, you want to find out, in ground, above ground, and understand that, it's pretty important to understand the state of that pool, because it could be an expensive fix if you're not aware of what kind of pool and what the problems are with the pool, if it has any problems. So that was number 4. Number 5 question, if you were going to list the house with a realtor, what repairs and or updating would you say would be needed? Now, that's a great way to find out what the house needs in the way of repairs, but also, what it needs to make it desirable, because a lot of people will tell you the house doesn't need anything, and then you get there and it's like, wow, well, this thing hasn't been touched for 20 years. It's still got, dark paneling and things like that, and it needs some updating. So I like to ask that question about repairs or updating, if they were going to sell it on the market with a realtor, because that gives them a better idea of the fact that, in order to sell the house for whatever price other houses in the area are selling for, typically it's got to be updated and fixed up. So you can get them to start talking about those repairs and all the different things that the house needs to have done before it could be put on the market for the kind of prices that you'll be asking for. Now, the next question is a really big one. It's going to be, and this one is one that some people I've heard ask right off the bat, and I think it's way too early to start asking it. But I think after talking to them a little bit and asking some open-ended questions based on their answers from the previous questions, this is a good time to ask this one. And this one is, why are you selling the house? And it requires some time and a great deal of open-ended questions. Like I said, you want them to be more comfortable so they really open up and share with you what the motivation is. Because most people are pretty embarrassed by situations that cause them to want to have to sell a house without anybody else knowing, or quickly without having a realtor list and all that kind of stuff. So you have to have built some rapport before you've asked this question, why are you selling the house? But that's definitely one to drill into more. So if they just say, oh, I want to sell it fast, well, that doesn't really tell you much. Or I want to get money. Okay, well, might ask you why you want to sell the house, or why do you want to get the money? What are you wanting to do with the money? Things like that. Because you got to drill down, ask them several levels deep to get down to the heart and the root of the situation, so you can better help them get what they want whenever you go to try to buy the house. The next question is, how much is owed on the house? And like I said, some people are afraid to ask that question for fear the seller's not going to appreciate it. In their mind, it's like asking, what their hand is. When they're playing cards. And honestly, I think 95%, or more of sellers that I talk to don't have any problem at all sharing what they owe on the property. And so it's definitely something not to shy away from. You just come out and ask them. Don't beat around the bush and start getting nervous and mentioning a bunch of stuff, because then it makes them feel nervous and want to close up. You just like, how much is owed on the house? And they'll tell you. And that's going to go a long ways in determining whether a deal is even possible or not. So that's an important question to ask. Now, is the house behind on payments? Is question number 8. Notice the wording I used, and that's saying that the house behind on payments, not that the person's behind on payments. It's a little bit less of an accusation or a something that'll make them feel a little bit bad about their situation. So typically just ask that. And you'll actually be surprised. I think a lot of people, when they start marketing to motivated sellers, think that a lot of people are going to be dealing with are people facing foreclosure. Now, you do on occasion deal with that, but most of the time it's not that. The people aren't facing foreclosure, so you'd be surprised. And a lot of times they'll tell you they're not behind on payments, or that they don't owe anything. So question number 9, do you have an asking price in mind? Now, is asking price in line with where you likely need to buy? The vast majority of the time it won't be. So don't worry about it. And like I said, some people take that asking price and think, oh, well, they're asking way too much. I'm not going to mess with it. Well, that's a big mistake, because that asking price doesn't mean that that's what they'll sell it for and that's what they're stuck on. So now if they spend an hour telling you about how nice the place is and that it's the biggest, nicest house in the neighborhood, you're probably going to want to just make it pretty quick, determine what a ballpark figure is going to be, and call them back and see if that's in the realm like I talked about. But ask them, what the asking price is. Next, number 10, what did you base that on? So this is important, because sometimes they're just picking that out of thin air, or they were told that by a neighbor or something. So you want to find out how they came up with that price. How did you come up with that price? Did a realtor pull comps for him? Or did they see a house down the street that sold for that price? Things like that, because then it's a good way of helping them realize that, if they're off, why they're off. So if they had done it based on a house that was for sale down the street, and during negotiation you find that they keep coming back to that, you can, if maybe that house wasn't comparable, you can, tell them in a roundabout way that's the case. I don't like to tell people they're wrong. Nobody likes to be told they're wrong, even if you're absolutely right. You don't want to do that. So that's why I say in a roundabout way, sort of share with them that house wasn't similar or something. Okay, so number 11, how soon were you wanting to have it sold and closed? This is another motivation building question, because if they want to be done with it yesterday, they're going to think about that while they're answering that question. They're going to let you know that really just, they want it just off their hands. And when people tell me that they just want to be done with it, and they maybe even cuss a little bit because of all the problems and stress that it's caused them, you got to head over there right away. I mean, you've got to set that appointment, get over there. Those are the people that you're going to be helping the most, going to be super happy about selling the property and make you a great deal. The next question is, if I come out and look at the property and make you a cash offer to buy it exactly the way it is and close on your schedule, what would be the least that you'd be willing to take? And that's the golden question, I think. I don't know, people call it different things, but this is a good point to ask this question, because you've already asked their asking price, and then you moved into more of the, the repairs and why they're selling. And now you're asking them again, basically, but you're saying what's the least that you would even consider. And it's amazing that most people will tell you thousands of dollars lower than what they just told you was their asking price, even $10,000 or $20,000 lower. They feel more comfortable with you. They're starting to maybe doubt their asking price. And so this is a great question to ask. And if you're not asking it for whatever reason, try it a couple times, and you will never not ask that question again. When can I come by to take a look at the house? Now, this is where you're setting up the appointment. You want to know as soon as possible how quickly they can show it, so that you can get over there and talk with them and look at the house and determine an offer to make an offer. So, sometimes I get lazy and I tell them I'll research it and get back to them to set up an appointment, because I'm not feeling that they're very motivated, and it's ridiculous. And every time I kick myself, because there's been times where it turns out like the thing was a heck of a deal. I was off and what I thought the house would sell for or something. And I said, why the heck didn't I just set that appointment on the phone? If it wasn't a good deal, I could have just called back and canceled that appointment. But always set that appointment. Number 14, how did you hear about me? You always want to know how people hear about you. Once you get into doing a lot of motivated seller marketing, you're going to want to know what your return on investment is for that marketing. You've got to know what's bringing the deals, the leads and the deals. Sometimes you'll have some marketing go out and you'll get a lot of calls, but none of those calls are very good. The people aren't motivated. You're not able to get a very good deal. So you've got to track those things. And REI Mobile is our CRM system for real estate investors and house flippers. And it's one of the main reasons why I built that software for me and my team to use, is to track, what marketing costs we have and what kind of leads and deals we're getting from that marketing. And so it's an easy way to do that. So you want to track, no matter how you do it, whether it's a spreadsheet or using REI Mobile or anything like that, you've got to track and know where these calls are coming from. So what's the best way to contact you? So this is a question number 15. What's the best way to contact you? You want to get as much contact information as you can, because a lot of times these people are in situations where they lose their cell phone service because of not making payments and things like that, and then you can't ever get a hold of them again. So you want to try to get some other contact information so that you're always able to get a hold of them. Sometimes they're even calling you. I've had people call me from motel office phones and things like that, because they are no longer in the house and they're at a motel or something and don't have a cell phone. So find out what the best way is to reach them. So those are the 15 important questions that you should be asking sellers when you talk to them on the phone for that first conversation. And I'll have on the show notes page at flippingjunkie.com/38, I'll have that checklist of those questions and some spaces for you to fill in the responses if you want to go about it that way. If you have REI Mobile, you can log in and enter that lead information and put all the notes and things into the fields to keep track of all that much easier. But if you want to get that checklist, just go to flippingjunkie.com/38. Now, real briefly, I'll talk about an appointment. So when you go to an appointment, a couple key things here, because this is probably should be a whole nother episode, is when you're at the appointment. But never tear a house apart. Never talk about all the negative stuff. Some of the house flipping shows on TV in the past, you'd have people go in and say, oh, this is a piece of junk. It needs to be tore down. They're beating up the seller thinking they're going to make it more, easier for them to accept their low offer. But what happens is you start to develop, they're going to put up the wall because they feel like, you're saying negative things about them and their house, and nobody likes that, So, it's better just to be friendly. Don't keep that stuff to yourself. Don't tear it apart and be negative about it. I always go in and say, oh, it's got a great layout. Of course it needs updating, but I'm always looking at the potential. And, I like the view out of the kitchen, the back window of the backyard. That's nice. It's going to make it nice to sell. So people are more friendly and will not have that wall put up between you when you talk to them that way. So don't ever, go through the house and tear it up and be negative about what you see when you're talking to the seller. And so another thing I wanted to bring up, as I was thinking about this episode was, since that first phone call where I freaked out and threw the phone to my wife, we've since talked to thousands of sellers. And in doing so, you get a good idea of where most sellers that sell to investors are at mentally and psychologically and, just in the situations that they're facing. And a lot of the success of, my website of getting leads online is because of that, understanding. The content and the questions that are asked on the website when people go to fill out the forms were set up in a way to capture those important things at the right time. So, anybody could say, well, I'm going to ask these questions and throw them up there without any thought. But, some thought was put into the best way to do that, just as I've put these 15 questions in a really good order to be able to maximize the benefit of them so that you get better answers from people because you're building rapport as you're asking those questions. And a website set up with content and stuff like that to also build that rapport. And that's why it's so important to have a website, have your picture on there and have some information about you and who you are, because people want to work with other people that they like. They don't, in the situations like a lot of the sellers are facing, they're not really looking for some company to come in and, high-powered salespeople that they can't relate to come in and take advantage of them. They're nervous about that. And so that's the benefit of all that experience. And as we continue to talk to sellers and people's ideas of people that buy houses change, over time, we're on the forefront of that because we are still flipping houses. We're still getting leads online. We're still getting leads through direct mail and things like that. And we have, our fingers on the pulse of all of it. So, that's the benefit of the lead propeller websites. That's what was put into those. And it's not just a website like, if you are on the fence about, well, I'm going to build my own website or maybe get one of those. The benefit is that, we're always working to optimize those for better conversion through content and through, the forms and the questions that are asked and all of those things to benefit you to get better information so that you have a better chance of getting that deal. And of course, the speed thing, just like these questions where, I tell you got to set that appointment immediately. Those websites are built to text you right away as soon as somebody fills out a form. And then you can call them right away or text them back or whatever they prefer and, get that appointment set so that you can, avoid so much competition with it. So that's that. You can check out the templates and things that we have over there. We've got some new templates coming out soon. I'm super excited about it. I've been working on some of the content. So within a couple weeks, have that new content, new templates up there. But check out leadpropeller.com. And next week, what we'll be doing is covering how to determine where you're going to be investing or maybe even should be investing. So your sort of target farm areas, what kind of areas to target to do some of the marketing. So as we get into more of the marketing tactics and different ways of marketing to motivated sellers, you'll have a better idea of how to approach those things and to where to do them, to where to put that marketing out to get people in those areas to call you up and sort of brand your business to be the person, the go-to person if someone wants to sell their house quickly and not the conventional way to give you a call to sell their house. But I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. It wasn't an interview style, and I just had this information that I wanted to share instead of asking somebody else. But I'd like to know your comments on it, and if you want to go, you can go to facebook.com/FlippingJunkie, and that's where we've got the Facebook page there, you can ask some questions. So if maybe there was something vague about any episode, or you'd like me to cover an episode topic that fits into where we're at within this sort of weekly training for how to flip houses, then leave some messages there. Alternatively, you could contact me through the Flipping Junkie website on the contact page. And once again, you can download that checklist, flippingjunkie.com/38. Have a great week. We'll talk to you next week.